Have you found yourself feeling relatively okay as you go to bed, but your anxiety rises as the time passes forward to peak when you see the first rays of the sun? If this sounds familiar to you, you've experienced what we call sunrise anxiety, and this episode is for you. We're going to see what sunrise anxiety is, how to meet it, and we're going to spend some time discussing a key element here, which is understanding surrender sleep. Let's take a look. Welcome. If you're new to the channel, a special welcome to you. And if you are a returning viewer, special welcome to you, of course, as well. And I actually have some shout outs today. This episode, where we talk about sunrise anxiety, is a sort of a follow up to the most recent Insomnia episode, which is 545, where we talked about sunset anxiety. And, very quickly, the sunset anxiety, that idea actually came from our chatbot, Ellie, our like ChatGPT bot that I designed and which is working within BedTyme. And it came up with this idea of sunset anxiety, or the terminology sunset anxiety. And very easily from then you can see there's another very common form of experiencing anxiety around the time and around sleep, which is sunrise anxiety. So this is kind of a very natural follow-up, which many people commented on in the comments to the previous episode. But a special shout out to maybe Jamie King 7477 and Manfred Conan 7479, who helped out when I couldn't find this expression. What do you resist persists. There are many versions of that, but thanks to both of you for sharing that in the comment section. It was very helpful. It was always frustrating. There's something you want to say, but you just can't find it, and you both helped me a lot with that. So with that said, let's jump into this episode. We are gonna look at how we can understand this phenomenon of sunrise anxiety. We're gonna see how we can meet it, and we're gonna add kind of a special, an extra little section here on surrender sleep, which is a different expression that we use in our teachings, but it fits so nicely here, so we had to add it, I thought. So anyway, with that said, let's understand sunrise anxiety. And we already talked in the intro about what that means. Sunrise anxiety is really when we get more and more anxious as time passes throughout the night, and we feel like really, really panicky when we realize that it is actually morning, the sun is rising, or the birds start singing, or you hear the garbage truck is like picking up garbage on your street, or for some reason that it is morning, the night is almost over, right? And then you feel really, really anxious at that point. That's what we call sunrise anxiety. And I think we all, where I often really want to start is here, that point out that what you've experienced, if you have experienced this, is something that many who have left the insomnia struggle have. I think it's always so nice to know that you're definitely not alone if you've experienced this. And I before I just edited these little things that you see on the screen here, and I said, initially I said, know that you experienced something that everyone who's left insomnia did. And I felt like, how do I know that everyone has? And I don't think it's necessarily true that everyone has it, but I changed that to many. And you may wonder, like, how can you know this, Daniel? You haven't done like a research study on this or anything, but I have talked to perhaps more people who have left insomnia than anyone on the planet. I don't know that for sure, but I think I must be one of the people who's talked to the most people who left the struggle. And something that I've taken note of is the following: whenever I have our coaches or I have a guest on the channel and I ask them, like, did you experience this? The answer is almost always yes. And how about this? Yes. And so what I've realized is that when you've left insomnia, or you had insomnia, you've almost always experienced not only like one facet of it, but all facets of it. And the reason I'm bringing this up again is just to emphasize for you, if you had this sunrise anxiety experience, to know that you're definitely not alone. Very, very, very common experience. Now, to fully understand it, I think in this for this topic of sunrise anxiety, it can be really helpful to think of insomnia as a performance anxiety. Insomnia can really be understood as a performance anxiety, where we have had trouble sleeping for some reason. We slept little, and we're starting to think, oh no, I've lost my ability to sleep, or I can't sleep anymore. I've forgotten how to sleep. I have to, I have to kind of push myself to be able to do that again. I have to try harder to do what I could before, but I can't now. And the tricky thing there, of course, is that sleep is a passive automatic process. And when we go like, I have to try, and we're putting in effort and we are pressuring ourselves, then we actually sleep less. So it becomes a performance anxiety where, the more we try to perform, the less we sleep and the more anxious we become. Now, with this in mind, we can see that when it's, let's say, bedtime, when we go to bed, and let's say we have several hours until the morning, then there is less pressure actually at this point. In the context of sunrise anxiety here, when we're thinking that I have to sleep, but I have plenty of time. With that in mind, we can see that there's less pressure as the night begins, and this is why you may have had a bit of the sunrise anxiety, but sometimes you fall asleep easily at night, because there's less pressure at that point. So even if you're somewhat anxious about sleep and you're to some degree trying to sleep, like there's some effort there, it may not be enough to keep you awake, so to speak. So you may find that you fall asleep some nights easily. Now, other nights on the we may have more pressure, and there's more of this kind of performance thinking, and that keeps us awake. And what then happens is that even though when we initially went to bed, our anxiety wasn't that high because we had plenty of time to quote unquote perform, with the passing of time, we think like, oh no, now I only have this many hours left. Now I only have this many hours left. Now I only have this many hours left. And you can see how our anxiety increases because our chance to sleep is diminishing as the hours tick by, and our kind of our performance anxiety increases because we're like, oh, now I only have this little time to quote unquote perform, to exert my skill here. So the closer we get to the end of the night, the more pressure and anxiety to sleep, and which of course keeps us awake. And all this was again to explain why we can have the sunrise anxiety phenomenon, where the closer we get to the sun rising, the more anxious we become because of the diminishing amount of time we have to quote unquote perform. And so to understanding sunrise anxiety, I think really is about thinking about a scenario where sleep has become sort of a task or skill, and then sunrise anxiety can follow from that. Now, if you think this sounds familiar to you, you of course wondered, what to do. So naturally, we go to our second section here, which is meeting sunrise anxiety. And I think again, emphasizing that you're not alone, and a different aspect of looking at this is like knowing that what you experience is actually evidence of a normal, healthy, functioning brain. When when our brain has started to think that this is very important, and I have to try harder to do this, then of course it will push us to do it. It will make us more anxious, so that we perform, so that we try harder, so that we get the results we want. Right? That is completely normal, actually. But the tricky thing with sunrise anxiety is that it's based on a misunderstanding. There isn't a task that can be performed. In fact, sleep is passive, right? So even though sunrise anxiety can feel like something must be wrong, this shouldn't be happening, it's actually evidence of a brain doing exactly what it's designed to do. There's just been a misunderstanding. Then the misunderstanding is that there is no actual skill to be performed. Sleep is not a skill. It's not an ability. It's not something that happens to us the harder we try. And when we see this, that really sets us us on a path of like less trying, less effort, and letting go, and that leads to no performance anxiety and no sunrise anxiety as well. So that's the first aspect, which I call A, and then B here is just an emphasis on something we talk about often, which is that all emotions become stronger the more we try to block them. And same with that, the anxiety that grows with the passing of time, that it's the same as any other anxiety we find. Like if we notice that, oh my gosh, I'm becoming more anxious the closer to sunrise, I have to stop that feeling. I don't want to be anxious. I have to calm myself down. That's not going to be helpful, because emotions are essentially our brain's way to communicate with us. And just as if a friend of ours has something they want to tell us, and we're like, no, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, and they think they have something really important to tell us, they're going to try even harder. Same thing plays out internally. So if we try to block anxiety that happens to happen the closer it gets to sunrise, excess anxiety always does. It becomes even stronger, right? So knowing this, we can find it easier to not try to stop the anxiety, even if it's uncomfortable, and that helps. And see here, we can find ourselves often awake at night, and we're thinking about the passing of time and how little time we will have left to sleep, et cetera, et cetera. And simply saying like, well, think of something else is not always that easy, So what can happen in this scenario is that it can be helpful to find any activity, anything to do that you don't do to try to distract yourself, and not to try to sleep or anything like that, but just something that you find is nice and gentle and easy, and something that makes that period when you're awake at night a little more bearable, a little bit more easy. That can be really, really helpful. So that can also be really, really helpful. And then finally, surrender sleep. What is surrender sleep? Surrender sleep is what we call it when somebody has experienced the following. Somebody who says, I'm up all night, but I finally fall asleep as the sun rises. Uh, and this is, as you can hear, it sounds very similar to the experience with surrender sleep, but here with it sounds very similar to sunrise anxiety, but with surrender sleep, we already know how it ends. It ends with us finally sleeping as the sun rises. And so I thought these topics are actually very related, because the person that talks, has experienced surrender sleep has also experienced sunrise anxiety, right? It's just we can look at surrender sleep as a way that sunrise anxiety ends, not the experience of sunrise anxiety, but the kind of individual night when we had sunrise anxiety. Now the question, of course, because why is this that we sometimes find that we finally sleep as the sun comes up? Well, it is because now that time to perform is over. The night is over. It is morning. It is time to get up. And now it is no longer the time where we're supposed to sleep. So when we sort of give up on that, when we say like, well, the night is over. I tried all night to sleep, but I didn't get a wink. Well, now it's time to get up. Well, guess what? The trying is over. The performance is over. And then we can find that we finally fall asleep when we have actually surrendered, when we have quote unquote given up on sleep. And this is really helpful to see, because it illustrates what we always talk about, that sleep is a passive process. It happens when we have stopped trying, right? And from there, we can see that, surrendering is something we can do at any point in time. It doesn't have to be that we wait until it's finally, the sun is finally coming up and it's morning, and that's when we finally surrender. Surrender can happen before that. We can actually go into the night with a surrender mindset, meaning like we go into the night with the mindset of like, what happens, and I'm not going to try to sleep. We have already quote unquote surrendered, in the sense that not surrendered as in kind of like, admitted defeat or anything like that, but surrender as in kind of like just acknowledging that there are things in life that cannot be controlled. Sleep is one of them, and we can have this willingness to experience whatever happens. Surrender as in kind of like surrender the attempts to control sleep is what it really refers to, and that's really, really helpful. So in summary, what to do is really education, I think, really understanding, because from education flows self-kindness and effortlessness and everything else that we value so much in life. Let us conclude there. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this episode, and thanks for being here. Bye for now. They say that the best things in life are free, and I truly hope that this free video helps you rediscover something else that is free, which is peaceful sleep. If you do find our content here helpful, then please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it with people, because the more views we get, the more people we reach, the more chances of changing lives we have. The thing is, leaving insomnia for good is actually so simple. You can and will rediscover a beautiful life at the end of this sleepless tunnel. So yes, please share it with people, hit the subscribe button, and you will be a big part of leading the change that we so want to see in the sleep universe. Thank you.